you're here with us today with Kenny. Kenny is awesome, and this is going to be a great presentation. So just tag us on Instagram or Facebook, and we can go ahead and get started. We could please welcome Kenny, today's presenter.
Glad to be with you guys. So I like to wander a little bit, so I've got my boundary here. It's like invisible tape. So, appreciate you guys letting me come talk to you today. My goal for today is you to get one thing out of this, right? I'm going to talk about a lot of different things around business processes, but at the end of the thing, if you got one nugget, one thing you kind of walk away and go, okay, I'm going to go apply that, or I'm going to go try that, that would be a success. If you walk out of here with zero, they're probably not going to invite you back. So somewhere between, one and a couple of things. So, but before we get started, so I hate it when people get up to do a presentation and they start with, let me tell you about me. I'm a sales guy at heart. I talk to clients all the time. And so whenever people start talking about themselves, I'm like, okay, you really should be talking about the client. But what I realize is I've done some of these things and I've listened to other people is your history and your background is important to kind of understand what you're going to talk about. Okay, so humor me just for a minute. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Kenny, and then we'll jump into the meat of it. So most importantly is my family. I always start with that. So this is the most important thing in the world to me. And so this is an Easter pic. There's Ashlyn on the left. She's 17. My beautiful wife of 26 years. When I was thinking about this, we actually started dating in 1990. So we've been together a really long time. And then there's our favorite child, Lauren. She's 23. Everybody knows it. Don't need to hide it. She's our favorite. And then our least favorite child, who just turned 16 and is hardly wrecked his truck. And that's a whole separate session on parenting teenage boys. But that's my family. They keep me grounded, so I have to start with that. If I can summarize my background on one slide, it would look like this. I'm a Conway boy. I'm a Wampus cat. I'm a UCA bear. I've lived in about a 2-mile radius my entire life in West Conway. So born and raised here, local guy. Very fortunate. I have an accounting degree from the University of Central Arkansas. I realized in my senior year, because I did a really good job on the party side, Mark could probably tell a few stories. Really good at that in college, not as good on the studies. But I realized the spring semester before I graduated that I hated accounting. Which was really not good career planning choice, but I just didn't. And so fortunately, complete blessing, back in those days, Axiom was hiring people with any type of degree. They bring you in and train you and all that. So fortunately, I was able to jump on there. Realized early that I'm not a technologist. I really wanted to be a SQL developer. I tried really hard, not good at it. People told me I was not good at it. But I found a niche for leading technical teams. So I was very fortunate early in my days there at Axiom, leading technical teams. That was kind of a niche for me. So 15 years there. I know there's a lot of different opinions about Axiom. I have nothing but positive to say. They taught me everything that I know. So 15 great years there. Ended up leaving there in 2009 because I was traveling every week. Those kids I just showed you, they were much younger then. And so I was on the road all the time. And so this conversation with my wife basically went like this. You can stay at Axiom or you can stay married. That's not what she said, but that's kind of how I heard it. So realized I needed to find a job that didn't require travel. Jumped over to a company called Bestcom, which is a digital signage company, great company. Thought I was going to go over there. Also ended up traveling again to all their clients, and I realized I'm the problem. So if I'm going to join a company, I need to find something with local clients. And at the time, Adapio, which we're going to talk a lot about, I want to show you a lot of examples on business processing from Adapio today. But Adapio does local IT services, so all the clients are here. So that was the best way to get me off an airplane was to get me over to Adapio. So this is my 12th year there. I moved into the CEO role in January of 2020, which was interesting, but been really blessed to kind of join a cool ride. I was person number 12 at Adapio. Back then, and we're at 130 strong, multiple states. Really part of a really cool technology company. So that's a little bit about my journey. So that's your couple-minute background. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about business processes, and this is what I want you guys to think about for just a minute. Is when we approach problems, we all typically kind of revolve into one of these three areas. We are either people, we are process people, or we are technology people. And you may think, how do I know which one I am? Here's the way to know. When you have a problem, when there's something happens at work, or what is your go-to way to solve it? If your go-to is, we need to find somebody to take care of that, you're a people person. If your thought is, we need to get the right people in the room and document a process and create a process for this so that it can be repeatable, you're more of a process person, right? If your first thought is, we need an app for that, or we need to get some kind of system to buy to make this easier, you kind of gravitate towards the technology side. None are bad. They're just all different. So with that definition, if you had to pick one, show of hands, who are my people? Laura, you're people? I've never guessed. All right, so about half the room are people. Who are my process people other than Jeff? Who are my process people? And Scott, yeah, I should have known that too. Scott and Jeff, I could have picked them. Process people, you think about putting process. Show me again, one time. Lost you. Okay. And then where are my tech people? Where are my, hey, I need some technology. Yes, guy with the computer. Yeah. I did a session for one of the 10X groups for Jeff and Glenn, and half the group was technology people. I was like, oh, I guess that makes sense, right? Okay. A lot of these are tech companies. But again, none are bad, but I think what I want you to realize today is who you are and kind of where you gravitate to. And then as we talk about the other two groups, it's going to give you an appreciation for how they think about things. When I first started doing this presentation back for 10X several years ago, I kind of thought of process people as kind of siloed. Anytime you had some process things to talk about, you had to have a process person. But what I've learned as I've gone through this and as I've kind of interacted with people at Adagio, there's actually process components in all three of these. So even if you're a people person, there's a way to think about process. So I'm going to show you some examples of that as we go through today. So, all right, for the half of you that are my people, this is kind of some, call it encouragement, right? Or things to think about for you people, right? So it's your result, right? When you think about something, you want to throw a person at it, right? That's what I'm a people person. When there's a problem at work, that's my go-to. Who's going to own this? Who can we hold accountable for getting this fixed? Do we need to hire somebody? Do we need to reallocate somebody? So when you think about people, the most important thing for me, and I think about people, is how you hold people accountable to get the things done that you're wanting them to do, right? And you kind of look at that through two lenses, right? You look at it through relationships and you look at it through results, right? And so typically you're going to err on one side or the other, right? You're going to get somebody in there that solves a problem, and maybe they are just going to get it done, right? They don't care how many dead bodies are in their way, they're just going to get it done. All right. Or then the other extreme of that is people who are relationship people. They're nice people. You like them. You like hanging out with them. They don't ever get anything done. Right. When I explain those two things, who thinks of people? Who's people? It's kind of like at church when they're preaching on something, you start that other people come to mind. When I describe those two extremes, who's thinking about somebody? You don't have to name them. Just thinking about them. Yeah. So it's the way you are. So what I would encourage you when you're thinking about people issues and you're thinking about processes, when you're bringing in people into your business or even people you're just interacting with, I always find myself trying to balance relationships and results. All right. One of my core values, Kenny's core value, is I want to be a nice person. I want to be a nice guy. Right. So I err on the side of relationships. And if you're not careful, you won't deliver the results that you committed. Right. And if you're on the other extreme of that, you're maybe like, I'm going to get this, I'm going to win. Right. Any college athletes, except my front row here, any college athletes in here, you want to win. Right. Yeah, be a college athlete. What was your sport? What was your sport? Yeah. So your athletes, see, Scott, there's all you out there. Yeah, we went right past it. If you're college athlete, what I find is if you're an athlete, you're going to compete, right? You guys are the ones that may leave some dead bodies in your past. So part of being a people person is to think about relationships and results. The other part is what I've learned through my journey as a people person is when I would hear people talk about mission, vision, core values, I would kind of gloss over and go, yeah, that's just fluff stuff. That's stuff you put on the slide and put it away. Let me tell you that is not true. As I moved into the CEO role back in January of 2020, I realized this is critical to inspire people. So when you're talking to people about how they're going to deliver the results or how they're going to build relationships, you don't have that foundation of mission, vision, and core values. It's really, really hard to do. The other encouragement I would give you as you're staffing, if you're going to add people, is to find people better than you at that specific area, right? So when I told you I have an accounting degree, so I kind of have a bent towards the financials. But when we were looking for a CFO, that was a big thing. I need to find somebody better than me at this, right? And so anytime you're going to add people or or anytime you go work with people, you want to identify those people that are better than you. And it doesn't mean they're better at you than everything. It means maybe they're better than you at process, right? Or maybe they're better than you at technology. So this whole idea of complimenting the people around you is really important. I read this in a Patrick Lencioni book years ago, and I probably didn't appreciate it until the last few years. This is the leader of a business, right? Your most important job is communication, right? And Lencioni had this quote in the book, and again, I kind of glossed over it, but I keep coming back to it, that a leader's most important job is communication, either in a company meeting or how you communicate with your team or how you do individual communication, right? It's the most important role of a leader. And so sometimes we get caught up in doing stuff all the time. And if you're in any kind of leadership position, it's a good reminder that the communication you do is just critical. And then continually evaluating your clients, your team, your people, yourself against all those criteria, right? I'm a different person than I was 5 years ago, right? We all are. And so what worked for you 5 years ago or even last year may not work. So be self-aware, continually kind of work on where you are, finding your gaps and making yourself better. So for you people, which are about half of you in here, those are just some tips and ideas to kind of think about to kind of enhance your skills. From a process perspective, if you're with a company, any size, right, your process, if you're a people person, is typically around your org chart, which basically just means who does what, right? Being real clear with each other on who is responsible for what. So whether you're in a small company or a really big company, the process you need to think about is, okay, I'm going to throw a person at it. That's how I think it's people, but I need to be real clear about who's going to do what. Right? We follow this model called EOS, called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. You guys may have heard of it. Gino Whitman, I wrote a book on it. There's a whole library of books, but it has this concept called the accountability chart, which really takes an organizational chart and combines it with the job description. And we just went through this process at Adapio, and it was so helpful because we weren't even clear. There were some gray areas on who was responsible for what. And so for you people folks, when you're thinking about process, you can't be too clear. Right? Write it down, be real clear on who's responsible for it. Okay. So from a people perspective, these are just some areas. You can find this is all Googleable. There's no nothing rocket science there, but I would encourage you to think about your business or think about what you're doing in these components. And then there's a few tips on org charts. You really don't need to have more than 5, 7-ish direct reports. We've got some people on our team now that have like 15 direct reports that they're responsible for, and they're struggling. It's really hard to do your job and do the things you're supposed to do, as well as keep up with, anything in the double digits. It's just tough to do. You really don't want to have multiple reporting. You don't want to have people reporting to multiple people. That could be dangerous. When you're a small company, you have to, but that's something to avoid as well. I used to be kind of against titles. I'm like, we'll just all get in there and mix it up. Titles matter to people. When you're recruiting, when you're doing reviews with people, I've learned this the hard way because I didn't put the focus on it. Titles are important, all right? So take the time, figure out what your titles are, be real clear with people, and then review it all the time. It always is going to change, right? It's that whole principle on the last slide about continually evaluating what you do. So from a people perspective, I hope those are a few tips for you guys that do that. Let's talk about process. So of the three areas, this is probably the one that I've had to learn and kind of grow into the most. Because if you're a people person, I'm going to put a couple of process map examples up here in a minute, and you guys are going to gloss over. Okay, and so I would encourage you to stick with me because it's really important. I appreciate this now more than probably I ever have in my career. So there's power in documented process, right? Don't assume people know things. Take the time and lay them out. I find it's really helpful to get outside perspectives. Right. So we actually brought in a consultant to help us. And you think, okay, you know your business. You're in the IT company. You don't know your business. But a consultant, somebody from the outside, looks at things differently. So sometimes if you're struggling, you can bring people in to help you. I had a lady I worked with at Axiom, and she'd bring in the sticky notes and the markers. Right. And you go, okay, my technology person, it's like, okay, there's got to be an out for that. Right. Why are you doing sticky notes? But it's really powerful to really lay out your processes, put them up on a big board, put them on a wall. There's power in that. Processes are never perfect, right? We use this progress over perfection. You guys have heard that in other areas of your life too. But just know it's not perfect, right? You're going to find ways to make it better over time, but you've got to get started at it. I think the last thing there is block time to do it. So what we were guilty of, I would say up until the last couple of years, is we talk about processes. We need some for new hire onboarding. We need some for new client onboarding or whatever it is, right? Bringing on a new client. But until you block the time and you hold somebody accountable, that would be an example of a result, right? I need this documented this quarter. We're going to document our problem. And until you hold people accountable to it and block time to make it important, you just won't do it. Especially for you people in here. You're just not going to do it. Don't make time for processes on Friday afternoon, just personal experience, right? Nobody wants to work on processes on Friday afternoon. If it's important, the signal to your company is if it's important, you do it early in the week, right? While everybody's fresh, right? And that's how you show people that it's important. So those are just a few tidbits. I want to show you some real basic examples because sometimes when you think process, you don't really have a good visual. So I've got several things I want to show you guys. Again, hopefully just to spark some interest. This one's pretty basic. This is the sales flow. So you can probably take everybody through this one, right? So you're creating opportunities, you're on your sales call, you know, you got your call to discuss the quote, right? Did the customer accept it? Yes. What do? You do a whole other set of things. Did the customer accept it? No. Then you flag it as lost. So this is just a real basic, when I say process, this is what I'm talking about. Whatever your workflow is for your specific area of the business, take time to lay it out. For you guys that have been doing this a long time in your respective area, this is going to be a pain. He's like, well, of course you know it. I'll just explain it to you. People don't understand until you take the time to lay it out. Another example from a project perspective, right? This is something I'm about to show you one in a lot more detail than one of our guys did. But again, just step by step. What do? You do this, then you do that, then you do that. That is when we say process now. And I can just feel some of the groaning from you people right now as we go through it. But trust me, it's worth the time. It's worth the investment. I give this presentation with more energy and more belief of this even than I did 5 years ago. It really does work. I'm going to show you an example of one we just did because it was mind-blowing. So I'm going to back it up and just show you the whole thing. We're not going to go through all this. So we just went through a process as we bring on new clients and we go sell. Again, not to show you the magnitude of it, right? So clearly this was done by a process person, right? We've got someone in our team who is passionate about this. And so on his own, right, he said, hey, I think we need to document this process. He went off, put it together, and then we've been refining it. But again, to show you the magnitude of what this thing can be, it's really powerful. And we go through it. When you're a new hire and you're a salesperson on our team, you're going to come through these processes and go, okay, if it's a stage one, prospecting lead, what happened, right? If you get a lead and it goes to phase two where you're qualifying it, what happened? Again, don't get caught up in the words on it, but as much as just understand, this is what we're talking about when we think about processes. It is literally step by step how to do things, okay? And so we have an internal version, and then for people like me that couldn't handle all that, they created an external version, right? Which was a simplified version of it. Still the same steps, but just a little more simplified in what we do. But again, we go through this with people and show them, okay, when you come in, when you're onboarding, you got to think about bringing in new people, right? They don't know what you know. And so if you'll take some of this time on the front end to line out, it really is powerful. Okay, let me take a breath there. We got a small enough group. Any questions? Process.
What process tool, what tools are you using to create?
This is Visio. Yeah, it's just Visio.
And is that where how you track processes just through?
Yeah, there's tools out there, plenty of them, but our guys, we use Visio.
Okay.
Yes. One of the things too that is really important, I'll zoom in a little more on this, is the who's involved, right? So for us, right, we're a little bigger company now, so things are a lot more complex than they did back when there were 12 of us. But part of the process is the who, right? For you people, when you're laying out processes, you got to remember it's about really who does what. So, for us, each of these roles has a place, right, in this. And so this is an example, and then as you can see, even the internal summary version is still pretty complicated. But we're going through. Is it this? If not, follow the flow. And so what happens is we're going through a process. We know with any given client where we are in the process. And we have to refine it, right? So I promise you 6 months from now, this won't look the same, right? Progress over perfection. So these are just examples of things that we'll continue to, hey, we can do this better. Hey, there's a new process with a vendor. We need to tweak it. But again, it's not perfect, but if you don't get started and have something that's at least 80% there, it's really hard to share that. Okay, everybody with me so far? That's your example. Okay, this is a fun exercise. Glenn and I do this with the 10X group, and we're not gonna do it today because the group's too big, but it really is a fun exercise. I would encourage you guys, as you go back and take this to your team, is to go through this, okay, we're gonna do an example of a process map. And we're gonna use how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And what you'll find when you go through this with your team is there's 100 ways to do everything. But it's fun because you laugh. When we go through with the 10X group, we're laughing. It's like, okay, what do you do? Get out the bread. Well, wait a minute. Where'd the bread come from? The pantry. Well, that one's got to go to the pantry. Okay. And so you can drill this down into a lot of different detail. But this is an example of one of the ones we came up with is, okay, once you get the bread, right? Left hand on twist top. You twist it, right? Is it loose? Yes. Unclamp it. If it's no, looser, right? So the funny part is I would have not been the one to put this together. Glenn put this together. He had a lot more fun with this because he's a process guy. But this is a really fun example just to show the value of it. So what does that mean? That means once you get this done, everybody does it the same way, right? Again, when there's a couple of you, I can speak to this. We used to onboard a new client when there were 12 of us at Adopted. It was no big deal because we were all around the table. We just kind of figured out, what did you do last time? Well, look at that. When you get to the size we are, it's a madhouse. And we're not as good at it as we should be. But if you'll invest the time, then when you bring people in, they just fall into flow right at the process. All right, so this is a lot of fun. I would encourage you, if you want to kind of go back to your group and kind of practice on this, it's a really cool exercise. These are some commandments. I'll let you guys take a picture of that if you want. But it's really funny to kind of go through that, right? And just hit a couple, right? No process maps that gather dust, right? That's the part where if you're going to go create the time and then it just goes on the shelf and nobody does anything with it, you just wasted a bunch of time, right? So it's got to continually be iterating. You can't make them overly complicated, which what I just showed you we did is way too complicated. But when you get to the size and scale, sometimes you just have to. Oh, 6 is a good one. Don't forget to include key stakeholders in the process. So when we first did the sales process, our sales engineer leader, his name's Douglas, he went through this, like he took this on himself, right? He's Superman. I'm going to go do this. Well, then he comes back and presents it to the sales team like it's done. And I'm sitting there going, oh, this is about to blow up, and the sales guy was like, that's not how that works. That's not what we do. And so, he shared a version that was about 50% right. And then we refined it, right, and made it better. So include your stakeholders, right? Don't come down from the mountain and say, okay, this is our process for this, right? Make it collaborative. No, you're going to iterate this. Let's see. Yeah, you talk about that, Mark, on that, like, don't covet your neighbor's software. There are 100, we're going to talk about technology in that. There's a really good lead in. There's 100 ways to do it, right? And everybody's got a strong opinion about their way, right? At the end of the day, you just want to process, right? So don't get hung up on the technology. So again, fun process for you guys. There's about a handful of you guys process guys in here. My challenge to you is to be the champion for wherever you are. If you're a process person, be the champion, go back and say, let me help you lay this out, because there's huge value in it. Even if you don't need it today, the way you talk about doing it, we're going to need this in 3 years or 5 years. And so it's much easier if you do it today. If we would have laid that sales process out that I just went through with you guys 3 or 4 years ago, I promise you it would have saved us a lot of pain. We waited until it was too late and did it out of just necessity, right? We can't get any bigger until we do this. If you do it early and get ahead of it, it makes it so much easier as you scale. Okay, questions on process before we jump to technology for my one technology guy? Yes.
With that map, that example that you showed us of a document for sales, who does that map? Is it a collaboration of people? Like you have your people do the roles part, are they all collaborating in one document together? And if so, what is that like collaboration?
Yeah, for us, what we typically do is, so somebody's got to be the author, right? Typically a process person, right? Who's the author, but then we all get, it's a virtual meeting or all around the table, and you get all those different people around together and you build it as you go, right? Or you let somebody take the first draft, right? It's a draft, it's not done. And you take a shot at it, because it's always easier to edit something than it is to build it. So what we did on that was he took the first shot at it. We thought it was 80% right. Turns out it was only about 50, maybe less. And then we just iterated on it. So I would not advise you get 8 people around a conference table and say, okay, what do y'all want to do? have somebody take a shot at it first, but again, make it collaborative. You got to get past some of this too with process people. I don't know if any of you guys are like this, but there's this pride of ownership, like it's my process. No, it's our, so you got to just acknowledge that. Look, we're going to say that was crazy, or we're going to shoot holes. Get ahead of that. Just say, look, this is not perfect. I'm not calling your baby ugly. We're just trying to make this better. So, because I even felt on our call, we were going through it, he was getting a little defensive. Well, this is how we should do it. But this is what we're doing now. Let's document that. If we want to refine it, we can. So, but the most important is make sure everybody's involved. Yes, ma'am.
Good question. So, I said that my question was good, right?
I have a great question.
So, really, so if you're in the middle of processing, you're mapping, are y'all mapping processes current, or are you mapping what the process should be ideally, and then going from there? Like, can you iterate the process while you're doing it, or do you recommend like mapping it and then?
Yeah, unless something's just on fire, I would recommend you do what you're doing, right? Assuming it's not broken. If it's broken, then yeah, you need to just go ahead and change it in. But if it's working, but it could be better, because what you could end up doing is then you end up blue skying. Oh, someday we want it to be this, and you're a year out, right? So if what you're doing is okay, I would document what you're doing today and then just identify the things you want to modify over time. Now, if it's broken, that's a different story. If it's broken, it's like, okay, we have to fix this now. Let's get this process. We're going to move to it tomorrow. So that's the way I would distinguish. Anybody else on process? All right, so here's your challenge on this part is just do it, right? Block the time, block your couple hours, get started, right? Because you leave sessions like this and you're like, okay, yeah, I need to do that. Nothing happens, right? Block your time, put it on your calendar, make yourself do it, right? There's the things, what I've learned for me at work, the things I hate to do. If I don't block time on my calendar to go do it, I won't do it. I don't need to do that. I'll just keep kicking the can. So process would be one of those. So it's like get the meeting scheduled, get it kicked off, get an owner, drive to it. Or if not, you're going to see this pop up next year on your calendar and go, oh, I wish I would have done that. So make something happen. All right, let's talk about technology. I know I picked on my technology guy, but we're all in a technology world, right? We're all impacted by this in some way. And so just a few things around technology, because here's the thing, even though this group may not be in whole, I promise you people you work with are, right? I work with all technology people, right? The answer to everything in my company is technology. We have so many technologies, it's impossible to keep up with. So this is an area near and dear to my heart. So here's just the caution areas for you. Most companies, including the Doppio, we underinvest in technology to help run their business, right? You typically underinvest, and some of that's not even just financially. Some of it is just on how you leverage it, right? There's a lot of manual things people still do. 2023, there's ways to automate almost everything right now. So most companies that underinvest. Here's the big thing for me is most time you don't fully utilize what you have, right? You have a tool that does 10 things, right? And you use it for 2. Right. And then when you have something that you need that does 5 and 6, you go buy a different technology. Right. That is like my most frustrating thing is, when you're making decisions, find something that will do all the problem, or at least most of the problem, and not just a couple parts of it. But there are so many different point solutions out there. If you're thinking about things, think holistically. I'm about to show you a way to do that here in just a minute. Figure out what process you want to do, right? What is the process you want to optimize, and then find the technology. We are infamous at finding a really cool technology and then discovering a way to use it. That is backwards, right? What are you trying to do, right? For us, it's patching, right? That's a big, machine patching. That's a big topic for us. So we don't go find a technology that's the best at patching, but it only works for half our clients. Done that before. We go say, all right, we need a technology that will patch 90% of our clients' machines. What's the best technology for that? So sometimes you can get too tech focused and miss the goal here. So those are just some ideas there. So I'm going to show you an example. So this is a process example of technology. So what we rolled out to help us from making all these mistakes is we have rolled out a technology scorecard. And again, I'm not going to take you guys through the detail of it, but from a process perspective, so our process people put something in place and said, okay, we're not buying any more technology until it goes through a review process. It needs a scorecard process. So this is our process for picking technology. And so it's define your vendors, what are your requirements, write them down, and then you measure, right? You're gonna measure, because you go through this thing, we're actually gonna decide what are the criteria that we're measuring against. And you'll see here, each tab has its own, section, and then we score it. So if we're looking for something for patching, we may evaluate 3 different technologies. In the past, what we do is go with whatever the strongest personality wanted. That was our typical technology selection process. It was the loudest or the smartest, right, or whatever. Well, that's not, you can't scale a company that way. So we created this scorecard that says, okay, we want something that does patching. Let's look at the Gartner report. Let's find the top 3 vendors that do this, and then we're going to go through an objective scoring process. All right. And so from a technology standpoint, this is the process. Like I said, each tab's got is based on a row. We score it, comes out with a score. Right. If you want to talk about process, the fact that Adafio has this today is comical because we never did this. I mean, this is like in the last 2 years for us. So don't let me stand up there and go, this is how we do things. This is brand new for us too. But now anything we do has got to go through a scorecard process. And that way you take all the bias out. So again, even from a process perspective for technology, there's things you can do to make better decisions. Okay, so that's our example. All right, one more slide, then I'm going to open it up to questions. So here's what I would leave you guys with. First of all, is figure out which person. We kind of did the show of hands. Did anybody change their type based on the first initial? Did anybody decide they were more of a process or tech or people, or is everybody still what they were before? Anybody change? All right, so so think about that for a minute. Based on my 30-second definition, you already knew where you were. That's pretty powerful. So my encouragement there is lean into it. Acknowledge what you are, and then find people to complement you around you. So when you're trying to do things and for me, if I need to make a technology decision, I know I want to surround my people that are wired that way. So, self-awareness is a big part of it. And then so surround yourself. This is probably more on the leadership topic for me, but if people ask me, what's the most important thing you've done to grow your career? All right, if you guys ask me that on a break or whatever, without a doubt, I would say is I have an amazing network of mentors, right? And so wherever you are in your journey, I would say, you've got to have great mentors in your life. And so a lot of what I've seen too, especially with some of the younger folks that are coming through, is they don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to, I know it all, right? It's like my 16-year-old son. I know how to drive. Yes, I had a wreck the first day, but I know how to drive. And we all were like that, right? No matter what it is. But my encouragement to you guys is be self-aware enough to recognize there are people that know more than you do. I was very fortunate. I know everything, but it's not ever been a problem. But find people in your life that you can invest in and spend time with them, right? And it doesn't have to be one person for everything. So when I need advice about parenting, I have a couple of men that I go to because I look to them and they're great parents, right? If I need advice about marriage, it's not the same people, right? These guys are great parents. I don't like the way that relationship looks. I have different people. Same in business, right? We're owned by a private equity company. We were acquired 15 months ago by private equity. I knew nothing about that. Guess what I did? I've got 3 CEOs who are owned by private equity that are my mentors. And I talk to them all the time. Hey, how'd you handle this? What about this? Tell me what not to screw up, right? And so my encouragement is wherever you are, find somebody 10 or 15 years ahead of you and go ask them lots of questions. And you got to be vulnerable to go do that. So if you ask me what was the most important thing that's helped me, it's that. Jeff just walked out here. I know when I have Jeff Sanders questions, I know what they are. And I'm like, I need 30 minutes to run something by you because he's also one of my best friends, but he's also one of my mentors because I ask him advice. So age is not always the indicator on it. It may just be somebody who's been more experienced at it. And then for you older folks in the room, like Scott and me, you're also going to find people at this age, and Mark too, is you're going to start mentoring people. So this was the big aha for me. I'm going to be 50 in a few months, so I'm in big self-awareness mode right now. And so, but what I realize is I actually have more people that I mentor, or at least as many as I have that are mentoring me. Right? Because all my mentors are getting old. So and you get to an age where you start, and I tell you, it makes you sharp. When you're mentoring people and they ask you to go, they ask you hard questions, like this guy up here asks me hard questions, and you have to answer them. So it actually makes you sharper. So don't just look at it from what I get. Look at it from what I'm getting about, being a mentor. I'm a big John Maxwell guy, or at least back in the early days. Now his books are kind of all regurgitated. I go back and read the early Maxwell stuff because all this stuff's just the same stuff. But, everything rises and falls on leadership. And so wherever you are in your journey, you're leading something, right? Whether that's at home or in a workplace or you aspire to be a leader. And I would just say, it's the most important requirement for business and personal success. All right. And so invest your time. There are so many different ways. I get overwhelmed by all the different ways there are to invest in leadership development right now. There are so many books and podcasts and webinars and mentor meetings. I mean, I feel like at this stage in my life, I'm on information overload. And so my encouragement is take one or two of those and go focus on them, right? Where I am, like, I can't listen to 3 leadership podcasts, read a couple books, meet with my mentors. I can't, it's just too much. And so my challenge is don't get overwhelmed with the noise, just pick one or two, right? If I'm going to read a leadership book, that's my focus. I'm not doing anything else while I finish this book, or I'll go listen to this podcast for a while. So find out whatever that is for you and then just go invest in it. Your words and actions matter wherever you are, right? So I'll give you a funny example. So when I started at Axiom, I was right out of school. I told you I didn't want to be an accountant. And so Axiom was hiring. What they were doing is they were hiring us, they called it the training pool. And there were like 30 or 40 of us in the group. And so I was 21. I was really good at all the fraternity stuff. Not as good as a student. I had a 3-point, which was really a 2.6, but I rounded up. So words and actions matter. I liked it, like when they were doing an aptitude test, I scored okay on that. Second week of the training pool, I raised my hand. I was 21. Let me just caveat. I was 21. Raise my hand. It was my first real job. Raise my hand. When do we get the results back from the drug test? It's serious, like fast. And she was like, "What is Lady Kirkland? What do you mean?" I was like, "That drug test we took before we started. When do we get the results back from that?" And she was like, "If you're here, you passed." And I went, "Yes." And I was sincere. I didn't mean anything about it. I was 21 and know. But like, words doesn't matter. It took me years to get out of that reputation, right? Because I mean, it's like that followed me. They told that story for years. And I mean, it's funny now that I'm almost 50, but I mean, it was like I was labeled as the guy, right? Your words and actions matter. And so whether you're 20 or 50 or whatever, it matters, especially today, right? So, I think even at work now, like, there was this lady at work, and I don't notice things. I don't do Facebook. And so this lady at work walked by, and she looked thinner to me. I was like, she looks like she lost some weight. I asked somebody at work, said, "Oh yeah, she's gone through this big weight loss. She's lost 60 pounds. She's put it on Facebook and all that stuff. You should tell her." And I went up to her and I went, but I couldn't figure out how to like say, "You look nice," or "You lost a lot of weight." I'm like, so it's better just not say anything. All right, just don't say anything. So your words and actions matter. And I use those as just 2 examples to know you just gotta be careful, right? What you say, what you do, they'll stick with you. So can't believe I just told you guys I asked that action question. But
You're on Facebook Live.
I'm on Facebook. It's true story. I'm not hard. So and then just great community. Last thing I'd leave you with is great communication is critical. And this is what I learned. You have to say the same thing over and over and over. There's a Jeff Bezos quote that I think it's from him that says, "It takes 7 times to tell somebody." And I believe it's more like 12. I mean, you got to say things. If you feel like you're repeating things too much, you're just starting to. And so whether that's at home, whether that's at work, I feel like in this world that we're in now, we don't communicate as well as we should in being clear with people. And one of the things I'd leave you with is wherever you are, right? If you're a people person, process, or technology, you still got to communicate with other people. And so in your job, to be successful, it's not about how much you know. It's not about your all the things it's if you can communicate well and you balance, I go back to relationships and results. If you can balance those 2 things, you'll be successful in whatever you do. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with today. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How important do you think it is to like set up some of these processes here and so on?
Great question. So my encouragement to you is to build this network of people, right? Find help. Right, places like this are phenomenal, right? To say, okay, this is the thing I'm trying to solve. Who are the best people to help me with that? Whether that be through mentoring programs or just networking and just, asking people's advice. But, when you're out there on your own and you're trying to balance people, process, and technology, the best way to do it is find people who are experts in those areas and be vulnerable enough to ask their advice. Because it's hard. I feel for you. I mean, it's tough to be able to balance all those things, but you gotta be open, right, to advice. Yes.
More just kind of a comment that you mentioned, like not good at backwards read, pilot technology and pilot use work. I feel like there's been instances we've learned the hard way. We have a problem instead of focusing on the process, we have this technology. But if you don't have the process behind technology, you're like, well, I can't do anything.
That's right. Or you find it and it solves one problem, right? But you still got to end up going to buy something else to solve the other. So yeah, that's a great. I mean, technology companies sell for that, right? I mean, they're trying to sell you their software or their app, but if you'll take the time to lay out what you need, and odds are you're probably going to pick something different. By the time you spend that time, you'll probably pick a different software.
Yeah, I love that you talked about having a network of mentors.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit about you joining the Conductor Connect and kind of the capacity that you'll serve as a mentor with Conductor.
Sure. Yeah, I think this program is really exciting around this. And this is exactly what we talked about, building a network of mentors is to go. So through the Conductor, you can actually go out and look at that network and say, okay, I need help with this processing mapping, right? What we talked about today, or I need help building out a financial plan or legal advice. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about what you guys are doing is it's because we don't all have the answers, right? You're going to ask me a legal question, right? And I don't, but there's a lot of people that do. So I think it's really cool to figure out specifically what you're trying to solve for that one time, right? You may have 10 issues, right, for your business, but what's the one thing you need help on today or one thing you need help on this quarter, and then go look on the side and find someone to help you.
And Kenny's on there, so we want some time with Kenny.
Yes.
Let us know.
I'm there. I'm available. So I love it. I think we do. We all have different experiences and all ways we can help. So I think the big thing is I would tell you is to be, whether you're an entrepreneur of one or a company of 10 or of 100 is my encouragement is people, right? To be able to say, this is where I'm struggling. I think sometimes we don't want to say, look, I don't know how to read an income statement. Don't. It's okay. Don't be embarrassed. It's okay. Right. And so whatever those specific issues are when you're dealing with a mentor, don't come in with guarded, right? Be able to be open and say, look, this is where I'm struggling with my business. I get on the phone with these CEOs. I think it's like my support group for them, but they've been fantastic. So I'm like, I don't understand what these private equity guys are saying. I don't know the words they're using. I don't understand the acronyms. I mean, this was, 15 months ago, they're using terms I don't know. I mean, we were started out from an accounting firm, so I know the financial terms, but these private equity guys are different. So I'll just jot down things they say, and then I'll just call one of my mentors. Okay, they said this. What does that mean? And so I think from a mentor perspective, the most important to me is being vulnerable to admit what you don't know and be coachable to learn it. Because you will. I promise you, I know a lot more about private equity world after the last 15 months than I did before. And it just takes time. Anybody else?
Do we have any questions on mine? Awesome. Well, thank you
Okay.
so
Yeah,
much.
thank you guys very much.